What is transcendence? What's that? Rule of thumb for poets. Each time you come across a word you do not know, you do not understand, use etymology. For wordsmiths, etymology is a science. For poets who are in charge of the subtle yet precise dimension of language, neglecting etymology is a fault. English is an Indo-European language. It has Germanic, Latinate, Greek, and even Sanskrit roots. Don't neglect etymology. It's a treat, right? And you may become multilingual along the way. Transcendence grew to be a multifaceted concept in philosophy, mathematics, and religious studies. Numerous philosophers wrote cryptic treatises about transcendence and obscured its definition. Fortunately, etymology is not dead yet and is all about clarity. Transcendence comes from Latin transcendens, transcendere, which means to cross or surpass. Trans is both a preverb and a preposition. Preverbs qualify an action and prepositions qualify a state. When it qualifies the object of an action or the goal of a motion, trans implies upwards movements. In other cases, trans connotes lateral or cross movements. Here's an example. Transformation, which simply means through form from one side of form to the other. Translation, from one meaning, language to the other. Transfiguration, from one representation to the other. Transportation, from one place to the other. Transgender, through gender, from one gender to the other. In transcendere, trans qualifies an action, since scendere is a verb, which means to climb. So the verb transcendence is about the uppest movement, the best movement upwards, a leap in absolute heights, not mere changes or cross-lateral movements. It's about what peaks, which is why transcendence has been associated with a peak in existence, the peak in existence, divinity. Now, thanks to etymology, you know that transcendence is never about sameness or lateral movements or mere change. Despite what you'll find in long and absolutely boring philosophical treatises, you cannot find transcendence in sameness. That's impossible. It contradicts the very meaning, the very essence of this word, of this concept, which is not quite a concept, which is a concept, but it's bigger than a concept. Transcendence is spiritual. Let me repeat that in another way. A story or a poem that is packed with human beings doing human things and having human emotions lacks transcendence. It certainly has change. It certainly displays transformation for the better or worse, because human beings in that story can go from joy to sadness and sadness to joy, love to hate and hatred to love. But it lacks transcendence because there is no absolute dimension. There is nothing extraordinary. Everything that you will read in it, you know it. You know about it. Transcendence is active seeking of the absolute, which is why for a poet, intention or the quest is essential. It's essential in poetic narratives. Because transcendence is a movement towards the absolute, a quest, a supreme intention to surpass what puts us in shackles, what puts us in chain. Transcendence always creates a tension. Transcendence always makes narratives peak. Transcendence creates paradoxes or unimaginable ordeals you will find in mythology. Mythology is the language of transcendence because it defies what's common, what's ordinary, just like the deity who defies the rules of nature. So, mythology is transcendental par excellence. Religions are also transcendental in nature. Abrahamic religions, for instance, as they advocate for a greater proximity with the divine, the absolute. Certain religions go the extra mile since they do not only recommend greater proximity with the divine or the absolute, but they also lay out a path to becoming one with it. Vedism is such a religion. Vedism is the philosophical system known today as Hinduism, and it's connected to yoga, which, by the way, means union with the universal intelligence and not physical exercise. Because poetry communicates wisdom or timeless existential knowledge, it must be memorable to be passed on. To make something memorable through generations, centuries, millennia, what do you need? You need formalism, so the message is easily retained and never lost. Music or matter does exactly that. You also need grandiose narratives, expressing universal truths in coded symbols, so the interest for the message never wears off. Mythology does exactly that. So, excellent poetry requires formalism, music, and a mythical, that is, transcendental dimension, a peak, an effort to reach the highest existential experience. A reason why Rimbaud considered poetry to be mystical, even priestly. And poets who channeled knowledge about self-realization or enlightenment in Indic cultures are called rishis, seers. Rimbaud got it right at some point in his youth, but destroyed himself in emotional overwhelm and did not allow his poetic genius to mature. I've already talked about emotion in another video, and I talk about emotion extensively in our podcast, Kelp the Poet's Life podcast. So maybe I'll come back with a specific video about biographies of poets and how emotional overwhelm caused them to destroy themselves. This leads us to the fifth and last aspect of great, memorable, and even life-changing poetry.